Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Okay, this is Turn the Page podcast with Stacy, and today we are interviewing author Kristan Higgins. Hi, Kristan.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for talking to us about your book. I literally finished it last night, and I was telling Ariane, who put us in contact, how I'm really enjoying the book, and I really loved it.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I've seen you once before at Penguin Random House discussing your previous book.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, so all your books appeal to me. I'm like, oh, this sounds so good. But because I'm reading a lot for work, I'm like, oh, I'll put it on my to-be-read pile. And I was so glad when I got the email, I'm like, do you want to interview her? And I'm like, yes, I want to read this book. I literally told my mother-in-law about it this morning. And then,
great.
Yeah, and then I was telling, because a friend was asking me last night what I was doing. I was like, I'm reading a book. And he's like, oh, what's it about? And I sent him the Goodreads page to it. And I was like, this is a basic breakdown of it, but it's a really good book.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it appeals to both. It can appeal to both men and women, because you do have male characters in there that can be relatable, like Miller, maybe not so much Clark, but I mean,
right.
He's there, too, to give an opinion.
He's a fascinating person.
Yeah.
Maybe not a nice person.
No, but all your characters are very interesting. And
thank you.
You're welcome. And I was just curious, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I wanted to write a story of different generations. And I wanted to write a point of view character who was older, who was a real protagonist in the story. And by older, I don't mean 40. Genevieve is 85 years old, and she's facing the end of her life, and she has some regrets. She doesn't like to admit that she has regrets, because she's one of those people who really enjoys being right all the time. But 17 years ago, she kicked out her pregnant granddaughter, who lived with her for 10 years. And told Emma, if you want to have a baby, then go ahead, be a grown-up. I'm not going to fund this. And now, with the end of her life looming, she thinks, maybe I should see Emma again and meet my great-grandchild, who is the 16-year-old Riley, Emma's daughter. And so I wanted to explore a story that's about love, loss, and redemption, and how we care for each other, whether it's reluctantly or with a full heart. I think that's a big part of the story.
Oh, definitely. I like the title. The title, for those listening, is Life and Other Inconveniences, which I think is great. And one of the blurbs that was sent us is, what sets you apart is your ability to find humor, grace, and hope in life's difficult lessons. And while there's a lot of difficult stuff that goes on in this book, it's not sad, it's not heavy, it doesn't drag you down. And I loved reading that. Every chapter, because it's the different perspectives, I'm just like, oh, how, interesting, oh, this is, and it goes back in time to bring up other characters from the past, or what a certain character was feeling while something was happening. So I just thought that was great.
Thank you. I really love to look at a person in real life or on the news or something and say, how did you get to be like this? You know, what made you the person that you are today? And I do love to go back and look at those big events that leave such marks on us, whether it's, and being bullied in middle school, or as in Genevieve's case in Life and Other Inconveniences, the loss of her son when he was 7. He goes missing, and he's never found. And so I wanted to see, what makes you a cold, rather terrifying, very impressive woman, and how did you get to be this way? And the same with Emma. how do you become such a wonderful mother? And how do you deal with imposter syndrome in your field? And Riley too is dealing with these things as she starts her young adult life. She's just now leaving childhood.
Yeah, I thought that the relationships between those women of the London family and then how their relationships with other people, it was just so interesting to read because you have Emma, who's been a single mother, even though she's had some support financially and let her daughter have a great relationship with her father, and not have the bitterness with his like new wife, Jamila.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh wow, like I like reading that because most of the time you're like, oh, like we don't get along, oh, we hate each other, and they become good friends.
Right. Again, I like to do sort of the not obvious relationship as well. So finding an ally in your ex's new wife um, was unexpected. And I think there's a theme in this book of unexpected allies. Jamila being one of them, uh, Emma's maternal grandfather, Paul, becoming sort of friendly with Genevieve,
Mm-hmm.
even though they're arch enemies to begin with. um, Emma and Miller kind of bonding over their struggle as single parents. Miller is a widower with the world's worst toddler.
Oh,
Uh,
she's nuts, Tess. When reading the scenes of what she does, I was like, oh my God. Like, she's like a little, like, savage.
She is, and I love kids, and there's been some really lovely children in past books, the adorable snuggly toddlers, and I thought, yeah, it's time for some reality.
Were
so
any of. Oh, sorry, go on.
of course, my children are angels, and I'm required to say that. But yeah, they put me through my paces when they were in the threes, and but I asked on my Facebook page, I'd love to hear your worst toddler stories, and it was like opening a vein on the interwebs.
Yeah.
People were so happy to tell me about how horrible their children had been, and the destruction and the cruelty that they say, because kids are completely unfiltered
Yeah.
at, at that age. And so,
But it was so interesting, like, because you're reading about Emma and how great of a relationship she was with Riley as a toddler, all the snuggly times, and then as soon as like Tess comes into the photo, the things she says to Miller, he
yes.
just fights everything. And then when they went on their date, I was like, oh my God, like if that ever happened, like I was like, I
Well,
can't imagine.
bad dates are a hallmark of my writing. I really love to write a terrible date. And so I think I wrote maybe the worst date ever for Miller and Emma. Um, but yeah, this book is about how family defines us. And Miller's role with his daughter is one of those things, what you pictured fatherhood being and what he got, and how he can make peace with the two. um,
Yeah.
Families of origin and families that we create, and how we care for them, and how we take care of each other. It's a big part of my book that you can't get through this life alone, and even when it's hard to ask for help, it's necessary.
Yeah, and it's an important message. It's a good message, definitely for readers. And I can't stop gushing about the book because I just finished it so fresh in my head. I'm just like, oh, I loved this and this, because you have the different families. You have the Finleys, you have the Londons, you have the Rileys, like all the different relationships. And then
Mm-hmm.
your chosen family that you build yourself. She had her friends Beth, Calissa, now Jamila. Like she built this family, and it, even though she didn't get along and there was tension between her and Genevieve for a long time, that ends up even being like, unpacked and gone through.
Right. And Emma's defining quality is that she's a good mother, even
Mm-hmm.
though she became a mother at 18. And she has been looking for a mother for herself, first with her own mom, who
Yeah.
was suffered from terrible depression and and dies by suicide when Emma is 8. And then Genevieve is the next candidate to be her maternal figure, but really falls down on the job. She provides for Emma, but she doesn't love her the way this little lost 8-year-old needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
But then Emma becomes, in a way, Genevieve's mother. When Genevieve really needs care and love, she steps up, and it's a tribute to her as a character, her capacity for love, for this woman Genevieve who so needs to be loved.
Yeah, I found Genevieve fascinating, all of her chapters.
Yeah,
so I was like, oh my God, like I want you to be real, and like so I could just be like, go visit a Genevieve London store and see your fashion empire. And I thought that was like interesting, her story of everything. But I have to tell you that just the descriptions of her house, Shearwater, I was like, oh my God, like I want to see this. Like, oh, of course you'd be friends or friendly with Martha Stewart. Like, I like the like random pop culture things. I almost died. I have to take a photo of the page in the book where it was like, what, her friends with the long hair, Snoopy something? Because I love Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg's friendship in real life. I'm a huge fan.
I know. It's, again, like those unexpected friendships and allies that pop up. But yeah, I mean, Shearwater is almost a character in the book. This beautiful house that where Genevieve raised her children and was happily married. And it's her outward statement to the world of who she is. So it's so much more than where she lives.
Yeah, it's really cool. Did you place most of it in Connecticut and do that because you're from there? You live there?
Well, I did. I do like to set most of my books in the Northeast because I think we have a very specific point of view and value system. But Connecticut's shoreline, where I do not live, I live in the valley, Connecticut River Valley. The Connecticut shoreline is a study of wealth and privilege, and it's only natural that Genevieve would live there on the water overlooking the Long Island Sound. So it made sense for her to be from Connecticut and a boarding school Vassar grad.
Yeah. Just like reading all about, I was like, oh wow, because I am not a boarding school child. I went to public school here on Long Island, and then a SUNY college for that. But I was just like, oh, it was so interesting to see it like that, kind of wealthy, like, because we have that on Long Island as well. But I liked reading that, like, even though she had this wealth and had this grace or elegance, it wasn't, especially when describing the home from Emma's perspective, that like it still was homey and wasn't so ostentatious. Like, because I even think that you reference in the book like some of the Newport mansions that there are, like, crazy gold and expensive, like, and I've been to seen some of those houses, but I'm just like, oh wow.
Right, and those were like built in the age where you just tried to outdo your neighbor. But for Genevieve, Shearwater is it is a beautiful home. It is a welcoming home. And yet Emma also describes, my bedroom when I was growing up was not my bedroom. I wasn't allowed to have posters or a bulletin board. It was a show place. It was a page from the Genevieve London catalog. And so, what you see is not necessarily what you get. And that's true of just about everything in the book, every character in the book.
I'd say that's true about life.
Yes.
So I think that was great. I totally recommend your book, and I can't wait to like go through your other books, because the book that I saw you was Good Luck with That, and I was like, oh my God, me and my friends got to talk about it.
Excellent.
I'm just so glad that we were able to talk to you and that we could share how awesome your book is, and I recommend it to everyone. I will make it a staff pick once it's no longer new.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristan.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.